When you look at life, do you look through the windshield or in the rearview mirror? Welcome back to the Do Hard Things Today podcast. Kevin Harrison here with Coach Katie Malone, and we are diving into it today. Interesting topic, Coach.
It is. I see you picked one of the key words there, trauma.
Trauma is a big word, and I feel like it is a word that is both real and is a word that we can use as a crutch as well. And we'll talk about that. We'll dive into that a little bit later. So I don't want anybody to get themselves really upset now and turn it off. We're going to talk about these things, and the goal in this session, called a session, and we are definitely not doctors or psychologists or psychiatrists or anything. But the goal here is to allow you the freedom and hopefully help you work through some mindset shifts that can help you get out of the past and stop allowing the past to continue to impact your present and future. Because if the past is doing that, it's not the past. It's your present reality.
Okay. I mean, I always like the saying that says you're not defined by your past. Mm-hmm. I also always tell people you're not defined by your race results. Yeah.
Well, and just a disclaimer here, we're not minimizing your past. We're not minimizing, and we're going to talk about a whole gamut in this. This is we talk about training specific things. Sometimes we talk about just life. Sometimes we talk about different things. I think this applies to everything.
I agree. This is everything, because when I think about, some people really get that mental barrier going with a triathlon if they've done one and they didn't do well. They really get scared going into the next one, and it's like, well, did you learn from it? Mm-hmm. And people say, well, if you're not winning, you're losing. And I'm like, well, if you're not winning, you should be learning, not losing. Because there's always a lesson there for us to take away. And it's just a matter of kind of what you do with the information that you kind of retain from any situation that wasn't ideal, whether it's a relationship or a race or, just life.
Yeah. Are you moving forward? And the question, I've had some conversations with some people in their lives, and I've had to work through this my own self at times of ask the question, did you survive it? So if whatever
surviving and thriving, I mean, are you surviving or thriving?
Yeah, and that's the thing of did you survive what happened to you? And if you did, and like what you just said, well, now have you learned to thrive again? Or are you living in a miserable existence?
I can answer the first question.
Okay.
Because we've answered it on this program before.
All right.
You have survived 100% of the things that have happened to you before now.
Yes, bingo. Man, see, Jed, not only is he the brains behind the podcast, he listens when we're talking about things. Now, say that again.
You have survived 100% of the things that have happened to you until now.
And that sounds very basic. Sounds very basic, Jed. But sometimes, I can tell you this out of experience. Sometimes when you have really bad things happen to you, that right there is a very, very powerful piece of information to have.
Right.
Because you survived it. You came. We were talking earlier today with some of the staff. This might seem like it's unrelated, but it's not. We were talking about Christmas movies, and I asked them. I said, okay. I said very quickly, and I want you to come in and go, what's your favorite movie scene of all time? Any movie. And so I was asking that question, and I told them, you know what mine is?
What?
to my surprise, two of the people I'm talking to have not even seen this movie. Rocky 1. Have you seen Rocky 1? Please tell me you've seen Rocky 1, Coach.
No.
Oh, man.
Maybe I saw it when I was, young.
Which scene?
So Rocky 1, boxing at that time, back when the real men were boxing, was 15 rounds.
Yep.
Round 14, Rocky he's fighting Apollo Creed. And just to set the scene for those of you, I know there's one or two people out there in this world who have not seen Rocky, and I've met 3 of them today. One of the top 10 grossing films of all time.
Fantastic movie.
Really having to decide whether we want to keep you on the podcast or not after this. After learning this piece of information,
I'm going to go home and watch
You're going to go home and watch
it.
At least go home and Google Rocky and round 14. And what happened? See, Rocky was just a journeyman, no good boxer, just a box. I mean, he was nothing. Apollo Creed was a world champion.
Mm-hmm. And
basically they wanted to create almost a publicity thing of, hey, let's give a little guy a chance. And Apollo Creed was going to go in and just beat him. Well, I mean, Apollo Creed absolutely beat the tar out of Rocky. The entire boxing match.
This doesn't sound very inspiring.
Well, just wait. And if you watch it on YouTube, you'll see it. And so in round 14, I mean, he's just beating him. This is where it says, cut me, Mick. And his eyes all busted up. And he's like, the only way he can see is if Mickey cuts him, so his eye swelling to go down. I know, we're not saying go out and do that. So round 14, he's just getting beat to smithereens. Gets knocked down. Apollo Creed turns around. He's facing the crowd. He's got his hands up. I'm winning. Crowd's a while thinking this whole thing's gone down. Ref's counting. You can just picture. He's just counting them, going to that 10 count. And then Rocky starts getting up. And you got to watch it to see it. And you're going to come back to him. You're going
Maybe I've seen this.
You're going to text me and you're going to like, man, that was powerful.
Okay.
You need to let Keen watch this. He's a hockey player, so he'll be in fights like this. So
no, my kid's not going to fight.
You need to you need to let him see. So Rocky gets up, and Apollo Creed is facing he's in the opposite corner, and he's facing the crowd, not facing Rocky. So Rocky makes his way to his feet, and just picture his gloves are down around his waist, and he's just beaten to a pulp. And he looks up, and Apollo Creed. The most powerful thing is Apollo Creed turns. His head turns, and he sees Rocky got up.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this incredible look on his face. Like, what am I facing? I cannot believe he got up and he's still coming forward. And Rocky, at that point, barely able to get his gloves up, and he motions for him to come on. Come on. And it's my favorite scene. And if you watch it, you'll see. And I would encourage any of you that it's an incredible scene to watch. And for those of you that are David Goggins fans, he talks about it sometimes, that that scene, that Rocky round 14 scene. But why I love that so much is he kept getting up. And he got up one more time every time. And, I just say that to what Jed said. You've survived everything up to this point. So if you were able to get up off the mat again, no matter what's happened to you, move forward. And it's just a little bit unrelated, but I think it does prove a point, because here's a question. Do you think people are victimized out there?
Absolutely.
Well, it all depends on your mentality.
No. Hear what I'm saying? Are people legitimately victimized?
Oh, of course.
Of course they are.
Of course.
No, I don't think anybody out there would say that is something that does not happen. The question is, have you been victimized, or are you now a victim? And there is a difference between those two things, of becoming victimized and then forming a victim mentality.
Yes, but I think it depends on the person.
What do you mean?
I think some people will always be victims because of the way they think.
Victim mentality.
Yeah.
Define victim mentality for me.
It's never their fault. It's always somebody else's. It's never going to get better, and it will never get better because that's the way they think. And there's nothing that you or I can do to change that. Like, that's something that maybe they just have to suddenly wake up one day and be like, whoa, I have just been, I've just accepted this as part of my persona, and they're going to be like that until they make that change. That's not something you or I can convince them otherwise, like, oh no, you're not a victim,
Who always gets the blame with these people with victim mentalities?
Somebody else.
Somebody else, right? What happened to them? You don't understand what happened to me.
Right.
And again, we're not minimizing these things. Bad stuff happens. And look, when bad stuff happens, it really knocks you down. And everybody has felt these kind of things. The parallel would be in, when you talk about racing, of how people have bad race results. And then
then it's usually my fault as the coach.
Then it's your fault. Then it's somebody else's fault. That mentality starts. You know what the thing about people with victim mentalities is? You know how you know that they are? You know how you know?
How? They tell you.
Well, they tell you, but you can smell them.
Oh, really?
Think about it. I want you to think about, and don't mention any names.
Obviously not.
I want you to think about people that you know that have a victim mentality, that it's always everybody else's fault. Oh, woe is me. All those things, always going blah, blah, blah.
They're the people in the grocery store that I see and walk the other way.
Yeah.
Those people.
That's what I mean. When they walk up to you.
No. They don't. If I see them first, I'm gone.
But if they do get to you, can you not smell them? And you know why you can smell them? And when I say, obviously, you can't literally smell them. But they come around you and it's like you're breathing in something that is toxic.
Well, I'm going to go with they drain your energy very quickly.
Yes.
They suck your energy down. You do not feel good around them. Everybody knows somebody like that. And I mean, I think though, like if you're somebody with good energy though, when you see this person, even though like I don't get super excited about people like that because sometimes I feel like I don't have I'm not vibrating at a high enough frequency that I have something to offer them at that moment. And whatever I had, they're going to take. But at the same time, people like that, like I am often going to, if I'm in a good enough place where I'm going to reach my hand out to them to help lift them up because a lot of times they really need it. The question is, are they going to take hold of it and actually move forward and move past whatever their issue is? And that's something that I can't do for them.
Yeah. Do you really want to get better?
A lot of times they don't. They just want to talk about it. Yeah. And they want to tell everybody their story. Like they definitely want people to know their stories.
Yeah. And when you tell people your stories,
it makes it worse. It makes it real again.
Yeah, and when something bad happens, it's okay to have people in your life that you tell your story to. That you're sharing that pain. You are bringing people that care about you into the boat with you to be able to help you through things. Mm-hmm. That is a very healthy thing to do. I would encourage people to. We talk about, therapy and these other things are very, very valuable things for people to participate in and to go and get help. Here is one of the, I believe, downfalls of some forms of therapy that are out there is they never really encourage you to get better.
Why would they? You are their paycheck.
You are their paycheck, and sometimes you come and I'm not care because I know tons of people who have gone in and had gone in and had professional help for things that have happened that if they have helped them work through those. Most most therapists are going to do that. Where you get in trouble is people who do not want to. If people do not want to get better, and all they want to do is, I want to come in and I want to pay you for an hour, and I just want to tell you how horrible my life is.
Yes, that's what they do. And how do the therapists leave there at the end of the day and function after they've heard horrible things?
Yeah.
Like I honestly, I have friends who are therapists, and I really ask them, what happens to your energy? Like, how do you function when you've heard stuff all day long like that?
Yeah.
And they never really answer me, but it takes a special person to be a therapist who can listen to that. And those people do need to be heard. They need to feel important. So many times there are people who really have suffered tremendous traumas, but and I gotta swing this whole conversation a little bit, because I feel like it's just getting depressing. There are the overcomers, the people who have had terrible losses and terrible things happen to them, and it's how they handle it, and they handle it just on another level, and it's those people who you have to look to for inspiration. And so many times when you see those people, you're never going to know that something terrible happened in their lives unless you talk to them. And usually they're not necessarily going to tell you right away, because that's not where they live. They don't live in that space. But I mean, I just think about, recent things that have happened in my life and with our team and how they've been handled. And I am inspired by this one person who had to deal with a traumatic loss this year. The way he has just been so kind and just handled it all. I don't know how, I look at him and I go, how does he do that? How does he do that? And I realize that most of it is how he thinks, and there's no blame game, and there's no, this is the way it is, and this is what I have to deal with now. And I'm going to be okay. And it's going to be okay. Some way, somehow it will be fine. And I think that those are the people really that we need to look to. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm one of the people who I kind of play victim. I mean, come on, we all play victim sometimes. I mean, we just do. We're human. But is it a habit? Are you doing it all the time?
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience.
Okay, go.
That when you go down that road,
yeah,
of the victim mindset, no matter what's happened to you, you very, very quickly become toxic. You become, it affects everybody around you. Get to the point where nobody wants to be around you. And then you start to isolate. And those things very quickly happen because of what you're doing to yourself. I heard this one time. An old man told me this. Was some of the best words I've ever heard. He said, something bad happens to you. He said, you're going to become one of two things. You're going to become an unhealed wounder, or you're going to become a wounded healer.
Oh yeah, I've heard this before.
I think I've said it. I think we said that on a podcast before. I think I've said that before on the podcast.
I think about better or bitter.
Yeah, and you think about that. You think about, you can use things when bad things happen to you. I think it's healthy to remember that pain, but then you can use that to help other people overcome that pain. Or you can reach down, and I knew a guy one time, we were talking, and I told him, I said, man, you have got to move past this. I said, it's like you're just stinking because of this. It is just eating you from the inside out. And he told me this. I'll never forget it. He said, sometimes I feel like I've got on a dirty diaper, my baby with a dirty diaper on, and I like to reach down. It's going to sound crazy, but I can tell you this is true. And anybody who's had the victim mentality before, you will resonate with this. You grab what's inside that dirty diaper and you just like to wipe it all over yourself. And you're wiping it all over, and it makes you feel better right then to be a victim. And to because what you're doing is you're shifting blame. You're putting that blame on somebody else. And by putting that blame on somebody else, you don't have to take responsibility for your actions. So that point of putting the blame on somebody else, even though you stink, it makes you feel better for a second because you're not having to take responsibility and do the hard work it's going to take to move through. Now, you don't seem like you're buying into that, but I believe that 100% to be true.
No, it is. Those people are out there. I just don't know that, they're going to actively change.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I might actively avoid them, but I don't know that I don't know that they're going to change. And so I think that you've got two types of people. You've got the types of people who are going to live in whatever their trauma was, whatever story they're telling themselves. Mm-hmm. That's their story. They're going to own it. That's where they want to be. Nothing you or I can say is going to change them to move them out of that story. Mm-hmm. Then you have people who horrible things happen to, who some way are managing to function at a very high level. Now, maybe they somehow compartmentalize the trauma, somehow aren't dealing with it. Like, that's probably not a good thing either, but they are functioning at a high level. And when you see them, they're fine, or they seem fine. So I guess, well, maybe what are we saying? Like, oh my gosh, are we saying that if you're not fine, I don't really want to talk to you, but just pretend you're fine? There's we're
no, we're not.
No, but it's hard. It's a hard topic.
I'm going to say no. I don't agree with what you're saying there.
Good.
In that, are some people, for lack of a better term, late adopters to the healing game?
Okay.
I think so. Again, the purpose of this episode is to help people, give people the tools, and give people some things to think about in their mindset to be able to try to overcome and step out of the past into the present and move forward into the future.
Okay, so first I think is identifying if you are a person who is stuck.
Yes. On
a traumatic event, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Like, just what I can think about from triathlon and cycling are people getting hit by cars. Mm-hmm. Like, that's pretty traumatic. Mm-hmm. And I know when we had an accident, like, I definitely needed to get a little extra help getting past that because, like, the woman that I worked with, she's like, you're stuck in a loop. And I think that we do get stuck in loops. Like, she's like, our thinking, it just loops and it won't stop.
And I think that is because, and then I want to let you finish that thought, because I think I don't want anybody to hear something we're not saying. We're not saying that therapy is not extremely valuable. We've all done it. It's a very valuable thing. I think what happens with some people is they get caught in this cycle of, I just want to go throw up on somebody in a therapy session every week, and I don't really want to get any better.
I think it's worse if they're throwing up on their friends.
Yeah, they're throwing up. But yeah, it is. But therapy becomes what you just said. It is someone helping you move past something and move forward. Where we get in trouble is when we get stuck. So continue your.
Well, so I just, I'm just speaking to it from a personal level that, you want to move forward. Like, you have to want to move forward. And some people, for whatever reason, they don't want to or they can't. Are there certain therapists or certain types of therapy that are really good at getting people unstuck? Yes. there are all sorts of different types of therapy available out there. It's just being able to find what's appropriate for you. A friend of mine told me, he's like, oh, if you want to go to a therapist, you're probably going to have to go to 5 or 6 different therapists until you find one that you mesh with. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that's a lot of time and money invested. And, just to find somebody who's appropriate for you. And I mean, I know there are a lot of online help options now, but again, this isn't really the point of this, but I think sometimes you need help getting over your trauma or whatever happened.
Yeah, absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. You know what I think the biggest barrier that we create for ourselves and I would say this as far as a failure that would seem like it's not a big deal, which is you drop out of a race. We talk about racing and things here a lot. You don't finish a race, you fail in your training, whatever it may be. Or if maybe a person really hurts you, maybe a relationship really hurts you, maybe it could be anything. Someone betrays you, no matter what it is. You know what I think the biggest barrier is to moving forward?
No, what?
Are you willing to make yourself vulnerable again to being hurt? Think about training. Somebody tries for an Ironman, not able to finish for whatever reason. How many times do people never move past that? It's like, you know what, I'm just not going to try again because I don't want to fail again. And I don't want to I don't want to put myself out there again and fail again. And maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've had trust, no matter what it may be. And then you create this hardened shell around yourself where you're just not going to allow yourself to be put in a vulnerable position again because you're afraid you might be hurt.
Right. Well, I can speak more to the Ironman scenario. I think that a lot of times when people don't finish an Ironman, like it's very upsetting because if they've really put in the time, like we have to be honest to look at the reasons, like did they get hurt? Did they really do all the training they needed to? Like why didn't they finish? Or did they have an accident during the race? And a lot of times that's the case. And I think that once they're out there racing and then they realize, oh, I'm not going to finish or I need to drop out, or even worse, they have an accident and they're taken out. It's usually a very hard pill to swallow that, you spent all this money, you put all this time into it, you invested. And so it takes time to get over, but I would say almost everyone who has not finished an Ironman has come back to redeem themselves. But especially when it's injury or, some crazy issue that they didn't even know existed when they're out there. Most people who are doing an Ironman, they have, they're pretty strong mentally going into it already because they've done the training.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit easier than normal daily life with people who are not athletes, especially. There's a different mentality. And I mean, it's how you've trained yourself to think. Like, just like you can train yourself to think in a positive manner and, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this happen. Like, that's how I operate. There are people who have trained themselves to be victims. And a lot of times I do see that people who are like that, if you look at their parents or their mother, especially for women, just because I have women friends, if you look at their mother was like that.
Yeah.
And so it's a learned behavior. I don't necessarily know that everybody really is a victim who presents that way.
It's rearview mirror or windshield.
Right.
And now, are you looking forward, moving forward? Or are you stuck looking in that rearview mirror?
And that's what you have to ask yourself, you know, like, where do I want to look and where am I going? And like, where have I been? Sure, as long as you've learned from it. But I really think most of the time we better be looking ahead.
Jed, you've been an observer to this dialogue, this deep dialogue that's been going on. Any thoughts? Some of the stuff we've been discussing.
That last point, especially about having the guts to make yourself vulnerable. Life is a series of questions. And a lot of times you're scared of the answer. And a lot of times you're scared that the answer is no, but a lot of times you're scared that the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. That balance is what you've got to come back to when you've suffered, when something has gone so terribly wrong, when you thought things were going right. Having the guts to roll the dice again is what you got to get back to.
Yeah, it is. And it's, and I just say this for everybody listening. Everybody listening, there's something in your mind right now. You're thinking about that right now. Something that has happened to you. It's a highly emotional thing. I know that for me, for y'all. I mean, it's a very intense thing. I would just encourage you to take the time to think through, man, you know, is it worth, you talk about rolling the dice, is it worth making yourself vulnerable again? Because you're never going to find true freedom until you're willing to do that. You just won't. And, you know, hey, you know, Jed, what you said at the beginning of, you survived every single thing that's happened to you up to this point.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that we don't look like Rocky in round 14 and have a big black eye and busted up nose, but you got back up and you're ready for another round. And I think so many people stop just this side of freedom because they're afraid. And they won't take that last step, and they don't just know that their breakthrough is just right there. It's just right there. And you got to want it. You got to want it. And for those of you that want it, I would encourage you to do whatever it takes to be able to move forward and look out that windshield. Stop looking in the rearview mirror. Stop playing the blame game. Stop wiping that all over you and feeling like this is my reality. It may very well have been your reality, but it doesn't have to be now. Doesn't have to be now. You can move through that. Coach, wrap us up.
I think it's all about where your mind is and what you set your mind on that determines kind of your destination overall. And if we stay stuck, you're going to be there 10 years from now. And so, like, I know in the last podcast we talked about, where are you 5 years ago? Where are you now? Why are you where you are now? And where are you going? I think that applies here too, but it's just, you've got to be honest with yourself with the answers. And if you do the work now, do the hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.